The first few minutes and last few minutes are the most important part of any film. That ending is the director's final chance to wow the audience, and it's what they'll remember the most as they exit the theatre or unstick themselves from the sofa and start chatting with their friends. As such, a brilliant ending can be a major fuel source for positive word of mouth, so it's vital that it's strong. Similarly, a powerful opening is what will get audiences hooked in the first place, ensuring that they're engaged throughout the rest of the film, right up to that hopefully knockout finale. As a result, we often see movies put extra effort and care into their openings, with the filmmakers crafting them for maximum shock, horror, amazement, or emotional value, getting their films off to the best and most memorable starts. It's no surprise then that best movie opening scene is an often discussed topic amongst film fans. And with a Reddit thread recently covering this topic, we thought we'd take a look at some of the opening scenes that those Redditors voted as their favourites. With that in mind then, I'm Ellie with What Culture, and here are 10 best opening movie scenes of all time, according to Reddit. Number 10. X-Men 2. Before Spider-Man 2 and The Dark Knight, there was a period of time when X-Men 2 might have been the greatest comic book movie ever, and its incredible opening action scene was a big reason why. After a stirring monologue from Charles Xavier and a short CG title sequence, said action scene picks up inside the White House, with teleporting demon Nightcrawler laying down the smack on a small army of the president's guards. With an evocative operatic score, a flawless blend of practical and digital effects, and some masterful camera work that really sells the confusion of fighting a foe with such unpredictable movement, it's hard to find fault with the technical execution of the scene. It's also a perfect example of action-serving story, with a member of the oppressed mutant society fighting back against a symbol of not just American power but global power. It's an effective sequence on so many levels, and simply put, this is superpowered action at its finest. Number 9. Lord of War. Lord of War is a decent film that people rarely talk about, but when they do, the conversation usually revolves around one specific scene: the opening. The film kicks off with the striking image of Nicolas Cage's lead character stood in a field of bullets, before transitioning to a remarkable credit sequence which tracks the life of a bullet. We start in a factory where the bullet is produced and shipped, and eventually end up in the barrel of a gun before the bullet is fired right into a child's head, and the scene slams to black. As Reddit user Another Pipe Guy points out, the scene is engaging and fun to watch at first, as the bullet moves through production, but as it continues on, the mood slowly changes until that final emotional punch, where we're shown exactly what that single bullet is capable of. In other words, it's one of those scenes that tells a gripping story all by itself, and with some impressive effects work bringing the whole thing to life in a convincing way, this sequence is impossible to forget. Number 8. Saving Private Ryan. Okay, sure, the Omaha Beach landing isn't technically the very first scene of Steven Spielberg's Saving Private Ryan, but since it's what most people remember as the opening of the film, Reddit decided to give it a well-deserved shout-out. The movie actually begins with an elderly veteran visiting a cemetery, but this scene quickly transitions into that iconic beach set action sequence in which we witness the chaos and brutality of war through the eyes of Tom Hanks's Captain Miller. Understanding that war most certainly isn't pretty, Spielberg brings this horrific situation to life with some disorienting handheld camera work, a barrage of blood, bullets and dirt, and a slew of smaller touches like the soldiers throwing up on the boat and the shot of Miller's hand shaking with terror, that do the best possible job of transporting the viewer into the soldier's shoes. It's equal parts riveting and horrifying. A cinematic masterclass that is still the most memorable scene in a war movie over 20 years later. Number 7. Back to the Future. Sticking with Spielberg, who's on producing duties this time round, but with a significant shift in tone, the intro sequence in the original Back to the Future is a textbook example of smart visual storytelling. Though it's just a single shot that pans across a room, the amount of information it conveys is remarkable. For starters, all the clocks and crazy inventions tell us that Doc is a bit of a nutter. But that's not even the half of it. There's the newscaster describing the stolen plutonium, which is then revealed to be in this very room. There's the shot of Marty putting Doc's key back underneath the rug, establishing that the two of them have a very close relationship. There's the homemade dog feeder, which is just bloody cool. And that's not to mention the slew of minor details like the newspaper cutout describing Brown's mansion's destruction, or the sight of a man hanging off a clock's arm. Foreshadowing alert! And who could forget Marty blowing up that giant speaker before uttering one of the cheesiest yet most fitting quips of all time: "Whoa! Rock and roll!" This one is far from an obvious choice when discussing best movie openings, and though it might not be showy and action-packed, it lays down a lot of foundations for the movie's story in a creative, efficient way. Number 6. The Matrix. There are so many moments in The Matrix that are more iconic than its opening, but that doesn't mean that we should forget how brilliant it is. It's a sequence that throws the audience in at the deep end, almost literally with that initial shot of the camera pushing inside the computer screen, and doesn't let them out for a good few minutes, as we witness a then unnamed Trinity beating the hell out of a group of cops with little explanation for why this is happening. With the first appearance of Hugo Weaving's smooth-talking Agent Smith, a slice of that kick-ass Matrix action, and that final WTF moment of Trinity getting hit by the truck, it gets the movie off to a thumping start, doing just enough to leave you feeling excited and intrigued for what's to come. The sequence was finally summarised by one Reddit commenter, who described it like this: "You have no idea what the hell just happened, but you know it was cool AF. Spot on, random citizen. Spot on." Number 5. Up. Like Saving Private Ryan, the scene that most people remember as the opening of Pixar's Up isn't actually the opening. We are of course talking about the montage of Carl and Ellie's life, which actually starts around 7 minutes in, just after the two characters meet as kids. Still, since this sequence does give the movie's primary narrative its initial thrust, it sort of is the opening. And since that's how people remember it anyway, it's worthy of a spot on this list. The phrase roller coaster of emotions is used a lot when describing movies, but this montage might be the most apt use of that phrase we've ever seen. From the joys of marriage and home building to the pain of loss and death, the sequence captures the highs and lows of life using nothing more than some creative imagery. The babies appearing as clouds in the sky, the slow pan to a dimly lit doctor's office, and a wonderful piece of music from composer Michael Giacchino. Funny, heartbreaking, hopeful, and every other emotion you could possibly feel. And it does all of this without a single line of dialogue. Without question, this is one of the most impressive things that Pixar has ever done. Number 4. Raiders of the Lost Ark. Spielberg strikes again. All of the Indiana Jones films have fantastic openings, even the fourth. But Raiders of the Lost Ark is the one that Reddit likes the most. Following Indy as he dodges booby traps in a Peruvian temple, retrieves a golden idol, then escapes said temple with an enormous boulder chasing him down, it's an adrenaline-pumping sequence that really does have it all. From a pinch of humour to a dash of horror to a few skillfully staged action beats. It's almost a mini-movie in its own right, with Indy's superb whip-cracking reveal, a major plot twist, and a third-act gut punch in the form of villain Renee Belloq's arrival on the scene. It's a testament to Spielberg's greatest of all time status that there are 10 or 12 iconic moments in this one sequence alone. And bonus points must also be given to John Williams, who uses this opening to debut one of the best movie themes of all time, which will now be stuck in my head for the rest of the day. Number 3. The Dark Knight. The sequence that has us all doing that Leonardo DiCaprio pointing at the TV meme as we try to guess which window will smash. The Dark Knight's bank heist opening is gripping from the very first frame to the very last. Trailing a group of robbers as they unwittingly succumb to the Joker's deadly game, the sequence works as a killer action set piece in its own right, with that expansive IMAX frame lending the whole thing a grand scale, while also serving as our introduction to Heath Ledger's psychotic clown and his ongoing feud with the mob. Cue a series of shocking deaths, intense shoutouts, and some twisted humour, with one of the greatest villain reveals in movie history. Seriously, who doesn't get chills when Ledger pulls off his mask and utters that chilling line, while Hans Zimmer's score ramps to an electric crescendo? The Dark Knight kicked off a Christopher Nolan trend, wherein he would start his movies with a huge, relatively standalone action sequence often dubbed a prologue. The Dark Knight Rises and Tenet have mirrored this technique in the years since, but The Dark Knight has yet to be topped. Number 2. Scream, 1996. The Scream franchise is famous for its shocking twists and turns, and the opening of the 1996 original might be its best. With actress Drew Barrymore being a major star at the time, it was expected that she'd have a substantial role in the film, especially considering that she was all over the marketing. So when she was brutally murdered in the opening few minutes, well, that was director Wes Craven tearing up the rulebook, throwing it on the ground and stamping on it right in front of our faces. Even without the element of Barrymore's fame, it's just a tense and well-paced scene, with the slow realization that Casey is caught in a trap, making the entire sequence drip with dread. Add some incredible voice work by Roger L. Jackson as the voice of Ghostface, a few bursts of shocking violence, and that agonizing moment where Casey comes so close to reaching her parents, and this is horror filmmaking at its absolute best. The scene is so effective that it traumatized several Redditors who have kids of their own. And it's not hard to see why. Number 1. Inglourious Basterds. Christoph Waltz won an Academy Award for his work in Inglourious Basterds, and he had it secured within the first 10 minutes of the movie. One of the quietest yet most nerve-shredding scenes ever put to film, the sequence where Colonel Hans Lander interrogates a French farmer and discovers that he's hiding a Jewish family underneath his floorboards, is completely and utterly captivating, despite consisting of little more than 2 men having a conversation. With Quentin Tarantino's expert penmanship though, a simple setup like this is elevated to the best scene in the movie. And with a true thespian like Waltz selling every single beat, every single line, and the numerous tonal shifts that occur throughout the scene, there's only one word to describe it: perfect. Incidentally, this opening is Tarantino's favourite thing he's ever written. High praise coming from someone with such a critically acclaimed filmography. And that concludes our list. If you can think of any other great opening sequences, then do let us know in the comments below. And while you're there, don't forget to like and subscribe and tap that notification bell. Also, head over to Twitter and follow us there, and I can be found across various social medias just by searching Ellie Littlechild. I've been Ellie with What Culture. I hope you have a magical day, and I'll see you real soon.